us off at number 10 is Lake Buena Vista Airport. If there is one thing that Disney does best, it's branding their empire. And once upon a time, an airport, of all things, was a part of the Disney dynasty. You see, when Walt was first trying to create Epcot, the community, not the theme park, he wanted a regional airport with 4 runways. This vision did not quite come to fruition, but what we did get was the 1971 Buena Vista Airport. This boutique airport, if you will, was only used by 2 airlines and was meant for Disney guests and employees, and the biggest feature it became known for was that When You Wish Upon a Star played after landing thanks to small grooves in the runway. However, cute factor aside, despite Walt's grand plans, the dream began to die in the 1980s with the construction of the monorail. The airport, now surrounded on either side, became dangerous to use, and so eventually no more flights were allowed in or out. Nowadays, the abandoned airport is mostly used for storage and parking rather than an attraction for the public, but it's said that Walt's abandoned plane is hidden somewhere on the lot, and who knows, maybe his ghost is still in there. Next up at number 9, the Wonders of Life Pavilion. I don't know about you, but when I think about Disney, I don't usually jump to health education. Well, as it turns out, the plan for the original Epcot included a pavilion that was to be dedicated to life and health, which eventually made its debut in 1989. The main attraction of this pavilion was called Body Wars, which was a ride that aimed to simulate what it felt like to travel through the human bloodstream, which, had I had the chance, I would for sure have wanted to get on to live out my Magic School Bus dreams. However, despite running for nearly 18 years, the Wonders of Life Pavilion closed without any explanation in January 2007. At the time of its closure, there were of course tons of rumors. However, the true reason has never been verified. It was just boarded up and closed off, which is definitely a bit suspicious, but could there be something they are hiding from the public that's locked away? I guess we'll never know. Next up at number 8, Pirates of the Caribbean. As the legend goes, during the construction for the Florida version of the Pirates of the Caribbean ride, a welder named George was killed in an accident. Now, the exact accident that happened to George does vary depending on who you ask. Some say he was crushed by a falling beam, while others say that he fell from the burning city portion of the ride and died as a result. But no matter how he died, everyone can agree on one thing: that he remains haunting the ride and terrorizing anyone who dares disrespect him. It's said George will stop the ride if he hears you say that you don't believe he's real, and superstitious cast members will greet George when they arrive and say goodbye when they leave to try and stay on his good side. So, with that being said, while it's not technically prohibited, it's not exactly somewhere you want to mess with, so if you do decide to take your chances, make sure you don't piss off George. You never know what might happen. Next up at number 7, Haunted Mansion. This next one is a story from a visitor at Disney World in Florida while riding the Haunted Mansion, who claims they witnessed a ghost and allegedly have the photo to prove it. Quote, "As you'll see in the photo, it appears as though a young boy is peeking his head out of the doom buggy and looking directly at me. Not only was he not there when I took the pic, there wasn't a boy of this age within 20 people in front of me in line. And as you can see, he's only a few doom buggies in front of me. Not only that, what's he doing looking at me? There is no flash and no visible light coming from me. It's all infrared and invisible to the naked eye. So could it be that the Haunted Mansion is in fact haunted by real ghosts? Just tread carefully if you try to find out for yourself. You never know what they could want from you." Next up at number 6, Walt's apartment. Depending on how much of a Disney fan you are, you may or may not be familiar with a certain apartment that's located above the firehouse on Main Street at Disneyland. The reason for this apartment was initially nothing terribly exciting, but simply because Mr. Disney himself wanted a place to stay that was on the property to make those late nights and early mornings a little easier. Now, to be fair, Walt's apartment isn't really prohibited anymore. You can go see it if you like, but the question is, should you? While nowadays a light is always left on in the front window, according to the legend, this wasn't always the case. It's said that one day a cast member looking after the apartment tried to turn the light off before leaving. However, after leaving the building, she looked up only to notice that the light was still on upstairs. Confused, but assuming she must have forgotten, she went back up to turn it off and came back downstairs. But once again, it was on. So she went up again, unplugged the lamp, only to find it once again still somehow back on by the time she came downstairs. The final time she went up, she heard an angry voice saying, quote, "I'm still here." And she was so frightened, she ran away and never returned back to work. Who could that voice have belonged to? No one knows for sure, but the light remains on so as to never anger it again. Coming in at number 5, Dolly's Dip. In 1984, Regina Young, or Dolly as she liked to go by, was tragically killed while riding the Matterhorn. It seems there was a malfunction in Dolly's seatbelt, resulting in her falling out of the bobsled and being struck by an oncoming sled. The family eventually settled with the park, and the park simultaneously changed the kinds of seatbelts used for that attraction. However, the park says that the two events are unrelated. Now, of course, the Matterhorn remains a public ride, so you're free to take your chances on it, but be warned, it's said that the ghost of Dolly haunts the ride, specifically at the location she was killed. Referred to as Dolly's Dip, visitors and employees alike say they have been haunted by her presence while inside. Some say they can feel her watching them, while others claim to have seen a full-bodied apparition. But unless you're looking for a little paranormal action on your next Disney trip, then I would suggest lining up for a different ride. Coming in at number 4, Nara Dreamland. Located in Japan, Nara Dreamland opened its doors to the public back in 1961. Now, from the get-go, the plan for this park was to be a part of the Disney franchise. In fact, Kunizo Matsuo, president of the Matsuo Entertainment Company, apparently met with Walt Disney to discuss the attraction with the plan of it being an official Disney park in mind. However, allegedly, after disagreements over the licensing fees for using the Disney characters, there was a huge falling out and Nara Dreamland was officially not an affiliated park. Now, I'm sure you're wondering, what the hell is this doing on a Disney list? Well, despite its lack of official Disney representation, it sure resembles a Disney park if I've ever seen one. Or rather, it did prior to its 2006 closure. Attractions like a large Matterhorn mountain, castle, and even a monorail found, and for many years it remained a ghost town, overgrown with nature and filled with an eerie presence. This, of course, caught the attention of Disney and horror fans alike for a while, but you had to be incredibly careful, as it was said visitors could be fined and arrested for trespassing into the abandoned property. However, as of 2017, the former theme park was demolished, but make no mistake, it's still not somewhere you should go poking around. While it was abandoned, some that snuck in complained of feeling like they were being watched or haunted by an angry entity, and it's believed that those same ghosts still haunt the grounds where it used to stand. Coming in at number 3, Nighttime Trespassers. In 1966, 19-year-old Thomas Guy Cleveland tried to sneak into Anaheim's Disneyland by scaling the park's outer fence and climbing along the monorail track. Now, why he was trying to sneak in after hours, we don't really know. But nonetheless, his devious plan all came to a halt when a nearby security guard noticed him. At first, he approached to get him to leave, but then he noticed a monorail was making its way along the tracks, and so he began yelling at Cleveland to get out of the way. At this point, Cleveland jumped and landed on a fiberglass canopy beneath the track to try and clear it, but unfortunately the canopy did not keep him safe. From there, the 25-kilometer-an-hour monorail struck Cleveland and dragged his body for 40 feet down the track. By the time the monorail had made a complete stop, his body had been torn to pieces. So whatever you do, for the love of God, don't try to scale the wall and sneak in at night. It might be the last night you ever have. Coming in at number 2, Discovery Island. Originally called Treasure Island, after the 1950 film of the same name, this Disney park opened to the public in 1974 as a premier tourist destination for Disney fans of all ages. Accessible only by resort boat or Disney cruise lines, the original park revolved around the theme of shipwrecks, secret caves, and buried treasure. However, in April 1976, Disney decided to rebrand to the new Discovery Island. This rebranding waved goodbye to pirate boats and treasure and instead welcomed rich flora and fauna, hoping to invite a more relaxing atmosphere, all while simultaneously showcasing and protecting Florida's local wildlife. Which, to be fair, it did for a while. Discovery Island was accredited by the Association of Zoological Parks and Aquariums, and at its peak housed over 500 endangered species. However, much to the public's surprise, Discovery Island was abandoned in 1999. The animals were relocated to a new park, Animal Kingdom, and the island park has remained a ghost town ever since. Now, while it's sort of unclear as to why it shut down, some reasons include wild roaming alligators, along with deadly bacteria found in the park's waters. And while all of that might sound intriguing, I promise you, you do not want to try and visit this one. Walt Disney World has banned all outings to the park. In fact, you're not allowed to get within 50 feet of its shoreline, and legal action can be taken if you're found trespassing. And that's not just a threat. People have actually been banned from all Disney parks for life for attempting to visit. So yeah, if I were you, I would steer clear of this one. And last up in our number 1 spot, River Country. After opening as the first water park at the Walt Disney World Resort in 1976, River Country was a popular destination for many years. And out of all of the places on this list, this one definitely has the wildest backstory. Controversy around the water park started to bubble up back in 1980, when a boy tragically died there due to an amoeba that was found in the water. The amoeba in question managed to kill him by attacking his brain and nervous system. However, Disney was absolved of the blame due to the fact that that specific amoeba could have bred in any fresh water. But the story's not done yet. Fast forward 2 years to 1982, and another boy died at River Country, this time from drowning on the Whoop'n'Holler slide. This time Disney was sued by the family of the boy, who claimed that there was no proper warning about how deep the water was, and a lifeguard testified, admitting that they had to routinely save dozens of people from that slide on a daily basis. Even so, the park remained open. Then in 1989, another boy drowned there. However, it wasn't until the events in September of 2001 went down that Disney was forced to close the park due to the nationwide tourism cutback. From that day forward, the doors have remained shut and the park has been closed off to the public, though some believe that those who have lost their lives still roam around haunting the grounds.
Kicking off the list at number 10, the Whispering Statue. Well, this doesn't sound terrifying at all. Okay. Over at Disneyland, Florida, there's a bronze statue of Goofy. He's 10 feet tall, he's shiny, he's sitting in the sun all day long, so he's probably boiling hot to touch. Well, rumor has it, if you sit next to Goofy on that bench for long enough, the guy might start whispering sweet nothings in your magic Mickey Mouse ears that you bought for $79. This statue can be found near the Lady and the Tramp restaurant over in Tonystown. Number 9. Caution, do not pull rope. Do not pull the rope. Don't do it. Normally when we see a sign that tells us not to do something, we listen, especially if it's near Indiana Jones Adventure Ride at Disneyland, Florida. You don't want to be running away from any rolling boulders, you know what I mean? Can't be poking around ancient cursed artifacts, my friend. This one's waiting for you in the queue area, so next time you're in line and you're bored out of your mind, maybe do pull a rope or two, see what happens. After the first tug, you'll hear a voice. A nearby excavator will tell you to cut it out. It's kind of funny, whatever. If you pull it a second time, you'll hear loud noises, crashes, and a big bang. It's actually pretty alarming. Apparently it scares a lot of kids, which is pretty fun. And it's all your fault. That's right, all because you pulled that rope. Better keep that line moving. Sounds like a heap of hurt waiting for you. Number 8. Musical manholes. Disneyland is full of magic. There's animatronics that move on their own, statues that whisper in your ears when you don't expect it. There's music in the air and also in the ground, apparently. In Disneyland, Florida's Toontown, there's a big fountain with Mickey leading an orchestra. Now these instruments aren't doing much, that is, until you stand on a tune hole cover. That's when corresponding instruments start to fire up. So if you have enough friends or family members, you could start an entire orchestra for guests at the park. And they would have no idea it's because of you and your Tune manhole cover. There's probably many of you who don't know this and accidentally stepped on a tuba cover. You're like, what was that? Number 7, hidden Mickeys. When Walt Disney himself said, "I only hope that we never lose sight of one thing, that it was all started by a mouse," I got to thinking, which mouse? Was it Stuart Little? Who was he talking about here? Was he talking about the mouse with an ear on its back? That's always a fun one. Or Mickey Mouse, of course. The iconic 3 circles that puts your imagination to the test. If you're visiting Disney Orlando anytime soon, keep an eye open for the hundreds of Mickey Mouse symbols hidden around the park. Yep, they're hidden in the walls, the floors, paintings. In total, there's rumored to be over 1,000 hidden Mickey Mouse logos. Number 6, no more dragons. Disney's Animal Kingdom was originally supposed to have even more animal goodness. Can you believe that? Even more magic. The park originally planned for 3 types of areas, 3 different themes. Animals that are real but now extinct, and animals that are mythological, like unicorns or even dragons per se. Evidence of this can be found looking directly at you when you enter the park. Right in the Animal Kingdom sign in front of the park, you can see a dragon representing the never finished Beastly Kingdom. That'd have been a lot of fun, Beastly Kingdom. You're like, is it real? I don't think it's real. Number 5, Cinderella Suite. Cinderella's castle at Disney World is the main attraction. Without that castle, it would just be a regular theme park. Of course, the castle is a smaller scale than a real medieval one, obviously, so it's a surprise to find out that there's actually a real hidden suite in that castle. And yes, it's quite magical. To get there, you'll need to take a pumpkin carriage elevator. How magical is that? And then in the actual suite, you'll find 2 beds and a pull-out couch. Yeah, nothing more enchanting than a pull-out couch. That's fun. That'll probably be mine if I went with friends for sure. There's stained glass windows, a fireplace to keep you warm in Orlando, Florida. But I almost forgot the most important detail. You need to be invited. Of course, you can't just waltz in there. It's not an Airbnb. Get out of here. You have to win a contest in order to even get in the building. To be honest, I don't think I'd want to spend the night here. It doesn't look cozy at all. Looks kind of scary and boring. Pull-out couches also? No way. Number 4, underground tunnels. In a place like Disney, there has to be room for employees to take a breather, right? That much time in character, all those high fives. I get it. I've done mascot work for a theme park. It's hot, it's sweaty, it's a lot of yuck going on inside that mask, right? It's not the easiest job. But they're human too. They need to take breaks, they need to clock in and clock out. Where does that magic happen? Well, this needs to be away from the public eye, right? You can't have people watch as Mickey takes his head off to go for a smoke. No way, obviously. So instead, Disney has hidden underground tunnels to move around the park without worrying about staying in character or getting caught in large crowds. During the early park days, Walt Disney himself saw a cowboy from Frontierland walk through Tomorrowland to get to his post. And it just didn't make any sense, you know? It took the magic out of the air. More than fair. So in turn, he made 392,000 square feet of underground tunnels, and that ought to do the trick. Yeah, and also, yes, they look creepy. There's zero magic in these tunnels. Number 3, teacups. The teacup ride is one of the best hidden gems in the park. The Fantasyland Spin Fest is worth waiting for if you know which cups to run for. And yes, it turns out it does matter. You always see kids running, you're like, does it matter? They're all the same. No, it definitely does matter. I was wrong my whole life. There's 18 teacups in total, and the speeds all vary. Here's a hot tip. The orange teacup with diamonds and the purple teacup, they go the fastest. All right, so pass that on. Pass it on to your family and friends. There you go. There's 2 teacups with hearts, and yes, they might be lovely, but these ones are the slower teacups. So if your date is like, oh, these ones look romantic, don't do it, okay? You gotta go to this one. We gotta go fast today. We gotta whip. That wheel in the center, we're not here for fun, okay? We're here for speed. We're clocking in numbers today. We're hitting G-forces. Number 2, family of the day. If you're a family of early birds and you also love waiting outside of amusement parks, well, have I got the place for you, my friends? Here we go. Every morning there's a loud opening ceremony known as the rope drop. This happens when the park first opens, right in the morning. The only way to get picked, according to insiders, is to have matching Disney gear and to arrive early and show energy. Nice. So no crying at 7 a.m., okay? This is Disneyland, okay? This is magical. Don't ruin our day. The family gets a tour of Main Street before it opens to the general public, and you get to walk around with Mickey and the gang all the way to the Magic Kingdom train station. And then they get to see the morning crowd all arrive and gather below. Major Willy Wonka vibes going on with this one. I don't know if I'd want a morning tour with all the mascots as they're waking up, yawning, giving me high fives. I'm all set. And finally, number 1, the spitting camel. If you thought Gold Tooth Goofy was fascinating, well, buckle up, Imagineers. In 2019, this secret location was actually removed. And honestly, good thing. Gone, but certainly not forgotten. That's why I'm here. Since 2001, the grounds of Magic Carpets of Aladdin were refreshing, to say the least. In Adventureland and Magic Kingdom, you'd be walking near the attraction when all of a sudden water would hit you in the face from somewhere. from something. Yeah, it turns out that camel that sits in front of the ride, he would sometimes squirt water out of its mouth randomly into some poor soul's retina. How lovely is that? Yeah, some lukewarm Florida pipe water hitting you directly in the pupil. How magical is that? There you go, grab a hat on the way out. As of 2019, the spinning camel has since been removed, but fear not, there's still the other camel. Let's just hope this one doesn't gain the ability to, project swamp water at passerbyers. That would be nice if it just stayed put.
Number 10. Pitching Aladdin. Aladdin is a lovely movie about valuing yourself beyond the external appearance of riches and fame. However, the majority of the story is made possible by the enigmatic genie, who himself is a being of awesome power, able to grant any of 3 wishes. And while the story is wonderful, we do need to remember how it opens. See, at the beginning of the film, Aladdin is presented as a sort of sales pitch by a merchant, which is a tactic frequently used with the hopes of getting people to spend more on goods than the goods are actually worth. Because of this, and due to the film's ending, it's entirely possible that the story is meant to scam us, the purchaser, out of our hard-earned money. Number 9. Cars. A world where anthropomorphic cars exist in the place of humans. It's cute, but certainly not if you think about it for more than a couple of seconds. Why are bugs cars? Are all living things in this universe cars? Down to the bacteria? Where does gas come from? Dinosaurs? But if bugs are cars, wouldn't dinosaurs also have been cars as well? Going on the establishment of this universe as everything that lives must be a car or some sort of motor vehicle, then that would make the act of drinking gasoline an act of cannibalism. Oh my god. How do cars reproduce? Oh, no, I can't. Number 8. The Old Mill. The Old Mill is a short film from 1937 produced by Disney. It's an interesting film that delves into a surrealist presentation of life on an old and disused windmill. However, some theorize that there's a much more sinister meaning behind the film's existence. See, the dreamlike nature and strange angling of the Old Mill suggests that the film is, in its entirety, a dream. As it progresses further into a storm, the dream becomes a nightmare, which is commonly experienced at REM sleep. In particular, REM sleep is a point in which the sleeper is the closest to death, where their mind becomes as close as it ever will be to the beyond. Scary stuff, right? Only in waking does the sleeper escape their mortality. Number 7. Post-Aladdin. Returning to Agrabah, there's another theory which has been rattling around about the potential state of its world. See, Aladdin primarily takes place within a singular city. The only time it doesn't are when we visit the tomb or take a brief dip in the ocean. However, one theory goes that, based on inferred meaning from several lines, the film may take place in the far distant future, to the point where even the name of the real world Arabia may have been altered as dialects have changed and language evolved into the similar but distinct Agrabah. If the genie had spent 10,000 years to get his so-called crick in the net, then we must wonder what length of time in history could have passed for such an artifact to have been built and then passed on. This theory is supported by the genie's frequent pop culture references, ones which he could not have known. Number 6. Wheezy. Yes, Stinky Pete was the villain of Toy Story 2. We all know that. Oh, what a big bad man, sure, but I know the truth. Remember Wheezy? Cute, gentle, discarded Wheezy, so comfortable in his new disuse as he was tossed aside by Andy? Wheezy, who was only played with for 3 to 6 months before his speaker broke? He watched, cold, mute, and alone as Andy picked up better toys, toys that didn't break. And then, when he found the yard sale, there was a glimpse of hope. Perhaps he might be able to escape his misery, his life stuck behind the bookshelf. But that hope is cruelly stolen from him by that wretched cowboy who hides him away once more in the shelves, that paper prison where he's rotted for so long. And then, when Buster takes Wheezy, it's a dream come true. But once more, Woody throws himself into the fray. Wheezy's eternal warden of hate. But when Woody is taken for his troubles by Al, it reveals something. Perhaps Wheezy planned this whole thing. He knew Woody would have tried to save him, and so he made sure that Woody was caught by the infamous toy collector. Al's Toy Barn is a constant commercial. Wheezy would have seen it at some time. A desperate plan, and ultimately one that was necessary for his freedom. Number 5. Fantasia. Disney's Fantasia is an artistic masterpiece, a surrealist showcase of animated skill and talent. However, it shares some interesting similarities with another work, one which many might know, Dante's Inferno. See, the beginning of the film could be interpreted as the flashing of a man's life before his eyes, the result of one passing on. From there, he is confronted by a devilish figure, and eventually taken up into heaven. With a precedent set by the old mill, it's clear that many workers at Disney were interested in portraying surrealist dreams, and with the amount of chemicals produced by the brain as one passes away, it's possible that the entire structure of this film was meant to represent this. Number 4. End of Snow White. Snow White, a Disney classic. A tale of romance, joy, and music. A tale of the end. In the opening of the film, Snow White is singing into a well when she is approached by a prince on a white steed. A common trope for sure, until we think about the implications of the color of the steed. When looking at the horsemen of the apocalypse, there are 2 riders whose horses are of a white color, one being Conquest, the other Death. I looked, and behold, a pale horse, and he who sat on it had the name Death, and Hades was following with him. A quote from the Book of Revelations. So, when Snow White eludes the prince here, only for him to find her at the story's end where she lay in the throes of poison, we must wonder, where was he taking her? I believe it's to her end. Her true end. Number 3. Hey Hey. In Moana and in Hawaiian legends, there are many gods. Several are central to the plot of the film. However, none are more devious than the one hidden within. That's right, Hey Hey is a demigod. This bizarre chicken is present for it all, and despite his immediate clumsiness, he is surprisingly durable. A normal chicken will live for roughly 5 to 10 years, and yet during the lifespan of Moana, Hey Hey never changes, never ages, just simply is. He does not need to eat nor sleep. All Hey Hey needs to do is be present to watch over his charge, Moana. And Moana does know this. She refuses to eat him with the statement that there's more to him than many think. I agree. Number 2. Carl. If you thought the beginning of Up was heavy, wait until you hear this. Carl is an old man, one who's lived for an extremely long life and is likely close to his end. This theory claims that he's already passed on, with Russell being his guardian angel. The idea of earning badges makes sense when contextualized by earning wings. Russell's desperation for Carl's approval is then justified by the fact that his entire existence requires Carl to be a good person, the earning of the badge being a symbol of Carl's kindness. And if angels can assume different forms, it would make sense for them to assume the form of a child, as Carl and Ellie were never able to have children, something which would have made him happier to see. Number 1. Wall-E food. A journey through space requires a massive amount of time and preparation. Resources are important, and their management is even more so. In Wall-E, the ships that are transporting humans throughout the stars have clearly been doing so for an extremely long time, far past the projected point that they'd initially imagined. So, what then are they eating? Apparently, it's a synthetic protein shake, but you can't just whip nutritious molecules out of the thin air. That's sorcery. So where do the materials for these foods come from? Completely separate question. How do they dispose of bodies? And don't tell me it's cremation. Lighting a fire on a spaceship is such a ludicrous idea, I will laugh you into the sun.
Starting off this countdown, we have the deadly accident. Disney has made the illusion that no deaths or accidents ever happen at their parks. That's a big lie. With thousands of guests coming and going every day, something is bound to happen, and Disney will go to extreme measures to make sure that word doesn't get out about it. One example would be Javier Cruz. In February of 2004, Javier Cruz, a worker at Disney, got dressed up as Pluto and headed out to join the parade. However, the foot of his costume got stuck and the float behind him didn't stop. It ran over him and he died. He had been working there for about 9 years. This was such a tragic accident, but it didn't make news like it should have. Moving on, at number 9, we have the unsanitary conditions. So back in the day, cast members at Walt Disney had to obviously share costumes, but they also had to share undergarments. Yeah, up until 2001, each costume had their own Disney-sanctioned undergarments that they would all have to share. That is so gross. But because of this, a lot of workers were passing around scabies and pubic lice to each other. That is highly, highly unsanitary. I'm just glad that that's not a thing anymore. They ain't gotta share that stuff. Moving on, at number 8, we have the sexism. Disney has a very sexist past. So a letter from Disney from back in 1938 showed that they wouldn't hire women to work for them. So the letter was addressed to a woman called Mary Ford, who applied for a position on the animation team. In the letter, Disney said, and I quote, "Women do not do any of the creative work in connection with preparing the cartoons for the screen, as that task is performed entirely by young men. For this reason, girls are not considered for the training school." At the time, women were being discriminated against in many ways, but many people were shocked and angered by this letter. Coming in at number 7, we have the cursed ride. Due to its dark history, Disney park workers and others believe that the Matterhorn ride is cursed. First off, this ride is responsible for the most fatal and non-fatal incidents. In 1964, a teen on the ride stood up in the bobsled and died after being thrown out from it. Then at another time, the ride caught on fire, injuring a family in their sled. And another visitor died after she was launched out of her seat and hit by another bobsled. You think they would have fixed the ride after the first couple of deaths. But no, they blame it on a curse instead. They should look into the safety of that ride. Clearly, it's not safe. And again, all those deaths happened at the park and still not a lot of people were talking about it. In our 6th spot, we have the deadly fireworks. Back in 2015, a Disney worker died after attempting to launch a firework off of his head. Devin Staples was a 22-year-old Disney employee. He was best known for dressing up as Gaston, but he would also dress up as multiple other characters. Upon lighting the firework, he died instantly. His brother said that there was no rushing him to the hospital. After the firework went off, he claims that there was no Devin left. Now, some say that this was actually an accident. He never really planned to light the firework, he was only teasing about it. Either way, this is so sad and tragic. But obviously, Disney doesn't want anyone to know that one of their workers died on their property while on shift. We are now at our 5th and halfway mark with Snow White. In 1937, Disney came out with Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, which is the first and oldest feature-length animated film released by them. Now, you would think that voicing Snow White would be the role of a lifetime. But no, think again. Adriana Caselotti, who voiced Snow White, actually had her career ruined by Disney. So Disney made sure that besides Snow White, she was never credited for any other work that she was in, and she was banned from doing any other voice work. Why? Because they wanted to preserve the illusion of Snow White. She couldn't even do radio interviews. That's a little extreme, like Disney owned her voice. Moving on to number 4, we have the Lemmings. In 1938, Disney came out with a nature documentary. In the documentary, there's a scene where a bunch of lemmings commit suicide by leaping into the ocean off of a cliff. And Disney claimed that that was normal and part of the animals' migration. They even had a clip in the movie showing the lemmings doing so. But this is entirely false. These animals don't just jump off cliffs in groups and kill themselves. So for this scene, Disney imported a bunch of lemmings and then pushed or threw them off of a cliff. That's not really a happy ever after ending for them, Disney. In our third spot, we have the ashes. So apparently it's a thing to take your loved ones to Disney World. Not your living loved ones, no, your dead loved ones. And then you sprinkle their ashes all over the park. Believe it or not, but this happens more often than you think. Visitors will bring their loved ones' ashes on a ride and then release them down on Disney World. What about the other people on the ride? Like, all you need is a gust of wind to blow those ashes right into their face. Now, there's one ride in particular that people love doing this on. Take a guess in the comments below. Done? Okay, it's the Haunted Mansion ride. I don't know what it is, but tons of people release their loved ones on this ride. And when that happens, Disney literally has a special vacuum that they use to suck up the remains. Like, they have a protocol in place for when people do this, cause it happens so often. That's so messed up. Maybe don't do that, cause your loved ones are just gonna end up in a vacuum, and then in the trash. Moving on to number 2, we have the alligator attacks. So once upon a time, Disney had a really bad alligator problem. But obviously they didn't want park guests to worry, so they kept downplaying the problem. From 2006 to 2015, 220 alligators had to be removed from Disney World. Then from 2015 to 2016, there was a massive increase of gators at the park. Since Disney is connected to waterways that intersect with lakes and rivers, alligators have an easier access to Disney than they admitted to. Sadly, in June of 2016, a young park guest was killed in an alligator attack. That's when Disney was exposed for downplaying the seriousness of their alligator problem. And in our number 1 spot, we have Debbie Stone. Debbie Stone was an 18-year-old hostess at Disney. However, in 1974, she sadly lost her life while on the job. And her death remains a huge mystery. So Debbie was a hostess for America Sings, which was a musical performance at Disneyland. For this attraction, you would be seated in a theater facing a stage, and after each performance, the theater would rotate. But sadly, during one performance, Debbie got caught between the rotating wall and the stationary stage wall. She was instantly crushed to death. She was found with her body in pieces. Her death was kept a secret, like all the other ones on the list. Disney didn't want the other workers to hear about it, and her friends working at Disney were not allowed to even make a memorial for her. But the mystery remains. How did Debbie end up between the walls? Was she pushed? Did she trip and fall? We don't know. Only Disney knows. Starting off this countdown, we have the secret tunnel system. I know I've talked about this before, but Walt Disney created a whole underground tunnel system for the characters to have a break. And it's for them to secretly get around the park without walking everywhere in costume. This way, this all preserves the magical feel of Disney. But some employees shared what really goes on down there. First off, they said that the tunnel system is fairly confusing, and on a number of occasions, people have gotten lost down there. One employee said that they had just got a job playing a Disney mascot character and went down into the tunnels and had no clue where to go. He went to ask other employees for help, but since he was new, they kind of just brushed him off. Another employee revealed that some of the cast members like to get it on during their breaks down in the tunnel system. So while you're up above having fun, they're down below having fun. Just in a different way, if you understand what I'm getting at. Coming in at number 9, we have the waiting lines. But before I go any further, if you guys are liking this video so far, make sure to give it a big thumbs up because it really helps us out. I think the one flaw about Disney are its lines. Seriously, nobody's got time for that. But a couple of years ago, a huge scandal broke out involving Disney and their waiting lines. Basically, rich families were paying tour guides that have access to these special passes for the disabled. Basically, with this pass, you get brought right to the top of the line because Disney wants guests with disabilities to have a great time. But wealthy, able people were abusing this, which is absolutely sickening. Can't believe people were actually doing this just to scam the system. Moving on to number 8, we have the overnighter. For this next point, let's move back along to Disney's tunnel system. So remember I talked about how new employees often get lost down in the tunnels? Well, there's this creepy urban legend about this happening to a new employee. So he finished his shift and went down to the tunnels to change. As he was making his way out, the lights in the tunnel shut off, and he was in the complete darkness. Now, he had trouble already finding the exit with the lights on. Now with the lights off, it was even more difficult. He ended up wandering around the tunnel system for hours before collapsing from exhaustion. He ended up staying there overnight. His coworkers found him in the morning. He was freezing cold and super scared. So now this story is kind of used to scare new employees. In our 7th spot, we have the suspicious death. So in 2012, a man's body was found near the Mickey and Friends parking structure at Disneyland. Police just assumed the man took his own life, but no witnesses ever reported seeing this man jump. Now what's weird is that I tried to search more into this case, but I couldn't find anything. We don't know what truly happened to this man and how he passed away, which is a little suspicious to me. In our 6th spot, we have Yes Man. So this story was shared by a former Disney employee that worked near the Indiana Jones ride. So his job was to dress up as an adventurer and just stand around. But he said he was often attacked by kids, and Disney told him that he just kind of had to take it. So these kids would often be super psyched to go on this ride, and so they were in costume and had plastic weapons. He said on a number of occasions, kids would come up to him and literally whip him with their weapons. Or he would get asked to duel, and he always had to say yes. So kids would just be jabbing him with their plastic swords. Yeah, that's not a job I would like. We're now at our 5th and halfway mark with Winnie the Pooh gets sued. I thought that was so clever. Like, I was typing that and I came up with that and I'm like, pat on the back. Good job, Lindsay. Anyway, in 1978, a guest at the park sued Disney and a cast member, claiming that the cast member playing Winnie the Pooh slapped their daughter. In 1981, their case was brought to court, and the cast member showed up in the Winnie the Pooh costume. He argued that their daughter was tugging on his costume, he turned around and accidentally knocked her over. And then in court, he proceeded to show the jury his costume's arms, saying it's not even physically possible for him to do that in the first place, you know, with his little limited movement. In the end, Disney ended up winning, but still, what a wild day at court. And I love how he showed up in costume. Coming in at number 4, we have the Deadly Ride. On June 26, 2007, a female guest passed away on the Rock and Roller Coaster avec Aerosmith ride at Disneyland Paris. After the ride was done, people noticed her unconscious. The paramedics arrived, but failed to revive her. Sadly, she passed away. Now, in articles it said that the ride wasn't going to reopen until they found out how and why she passed. But there's no follow-up articles outlining what went wrong on the ride. And it's not like she was 80 years old and had health conditions. No, she was fairly young. I just wish Disney let us know what happened, because the ride has been up and running ever since, but no official statement was ever released. In our 3rd spot, we have Disney's jail. Did you know that Disney has its own specific jail for criminals? Yeah, if you're caught breaking any of Disney's rules, you'll be escorted to Disney jail. Employees describe it as an underground room with bars on the windows. There's no bright colors or Mickeys decorating the area. Now, what causes you to be sent to Disney jail? Well, if you get too rowdy or too intoxicated at the park, if you smoke certain substances at the park, or if you're caught shoplifting. You get the picture. Disney is actually very strict when it comes to this. People caught shoplifting aren't even given a warning sometimes. Instead, they're just sent straight to their jail. From there, you can be fined, kicked out of the park, banned from ever coming back to the park, or all of the above. In our 2nd spot, we have Blake Lively's arrest. Believe it or not, but actress Blake Lively was once sent to Disney jail. Yeah, so basically her and her brother both snuck into Disneyland's park. What they did is put hairspray on the stamps of somebody that came out of the park and then put their hands together, and that transferred the stamp. Then they got to go in the park for free. Except Blake and her brother were caught by an undercover Disney cop and sent to Disney jail. I'm telling you, Disney has way too many undercover cops. Like, they're everywhere, which is a good thing for safety, but also kind of a bad thing because, you know, they're watching your every move. And in our number 1 spot, we have The Battle. This story comes from a Disney employee that worked at a store at the Disney park near the Indiana Jones ride. One time, 30 kids ran into the store and each grabbed a toy sword from the bin, you know, so that they could be just like Indiana Jones. But then the kids started attacking the 2 workers in the store. with their swords. And obviously the workers aren't allowed to like yell at the kids or panic or fight back, so they just let the kids attack them until their parents noticed and called them off. By then, he says his arms were already covered in cuts and bruises and he was bleeding. Yeah, maybe those weapons should be like placed behind the counter or something, you know, so things like that don't happen. Or maybe Disney should just have a better policy, I don't know. Starting off this countdown, we have Scar's corpse. The Lion King's character Scar can be seen in Hercules, but he's not alive. No, they show his dead body, which is pretty dark, Disney. Sheesh. So in Hercules, there's a scene where Hercules is wearing a lion on his body while he's getting painted. He then takes it off and throws it on the floor, and we can clearly tell that it's the body of Scar. So after the Lion King, Scar was skinned and then given to Hercules. How dark. And this was actually confirmed by Disney's lead animator. Andreas Deja worked on animating both Hercules and Scar in The Lion King. So they threw this in as a little Easter egg. In our 9th spot, we have The Shining. And if you guys are liking this video so far, why don't you hit that thumbs up button? Because it really helps us out and I appreciate it. Stephen King's The Shining was referenced an awful lot all throughout Toy Story, which is super whack because we all know that The Shining is not a kid's movie and it's certainly not Disney friendly. First, let's take a look at the first Toy Story. Fans were quick to point out that the carpet in Sid's house looks exactly like the carpet in the hotel in The Shining. I mean, they are different shades, but it's the exact same design, which is also quite clever because then they're trying to use this to symbolize how terrified the toys feel inside of Sid's house by comparing it to how the characters felt living in the hotel in The Shining. Like 10 out of 10, that was super well done. But that's not all. There was another reference to The Shining, but this time in Toy Story 3. They used the number 237 a lot throughout this film. 237 is referenced to room 237 in The Shining. This number can be seen on the license plate of a garbage truck, on a message Woody sent to a toy whose code name is Velocitar 237, and on the side of a security camera in Sunnyside Daycare. In fact, one of the editors on the film admitted that these were all references to The Shining. I mean, it's kind of a weird movie to reference in a kid's film, but whatever. Moving on, at number 8 we have Melted Olaf. Sadly, a lot of Disney characters don't have the happy ever after we thought they did. Next, let's take a look at Olaf from Frozen. He's such a fun and loving character, but sadly, he doesn't have the best ending. Sometime after Frozen, Olaf dies. He melts away. And his body can be seen in Moana. If you take a close look at the supplies Moana is carrying with her on her boat, you can see an oddly shaped carrot and a stick that looks like a hand. Looks exactly like Olaf's nose and hands. So Moana was using his nose as food and his arms as a possible fire starter for her mission. Well, that's dark. In our 7th spot, we have Finding Nemo. Again, for this next Easter egg, let's take a look at the tearjerker of a movie, Brother Bear. For real, if this movie didn't make you cry, then you're a monster, or your heart is made out of ice. Anyways, in one scene when the character is salmon fishing, we can see Nemo among the group of salmon that's about to be caught and eaten. First off, how the hell did Nemo, a tropical fish, get so far north? Like, Marlin must be tired of looking for your ass. Anyways, what does this mean? Well, it means that Nemo, the little rascal, went out again and got lost somehow. And then he ended up as someone's meal. I doubt he made it out alive this time. Now, it turns out that at this time, Disney and Pixar were feuding, so that might be why this creepy little cameo was put into the film. In our 6th spot, we have Skinned Sully. Now, I love the movie Monsters, Inc., so this one is pretty dark for all you fans out there. But Sully is dead. Yep, you heard me. He died sometime after Monsters, Inc. was released. So in the film, Randall always mentions how bad humans are. At one point, he says that humans skin monsters and make toilet seat covers out of their fur. Sadly, this foreshadowed the fate of Sully. In a Toy Story short called Toy Story Toons, Partysaurus Rex, there's a scene where we see a kid taking a bubble bath. And it just so happens that in the bathroom on the toilet seat is a fuzzy Sully seat cover. So Randall was right. Humans do skin the monsters and turn them into toilet seat covers. Poor Sully, he ended up being skinned alive. I wonder what happened to Mike then. We're now at our 5th and halfway mark with Boo Went Crazy. This next Disney Easter egg is accompanied with a pretty dark and crazy theory, so buckle your seatbelts. In the movie Brave, in the witch's workshop, we can see a wood carving of Sully. Why would that be there? First off, Brave takes place hundreds of years before Monsters, Inc. does. The witch and Sully didn't exist at the same time, but she drew him, meaning at some point in her life, she must have met him. Well, theory goes that this witch in Brave is Boo from Monsters, Inc. I know it seems wild right now, but just hear me out. So Monsters, Inc. takes place in the future when humans don't exist anymore. It's theorized that the monsters use the doors to go back in time to a child's house to then collect their energy. Meanwhile, in Brave, we see that the witch magically disappears when she goes through doorways. Just like the scarers from Monsters, Inc. do. So theory goes that Boo couldn't forget about Sully. She missed him so much that when she grew up, she figured out how to teleport through doors. She then teleports through these doors in an attempt to stumble across Sully again. It's just sad because she did not age well, and who's gonna tell her that Sully is a toilet seat cover? Not me. Coming in at number 4, we have The Shining Part 2. Toy Story isn't the only Disney movie to reference The Shining. The movie Coco does it too. And this is because the guy that added the Shining Easter eggs in Toy Story also worked on Coco. So in one scene, we see Dante, the dog, waking up from a nap. In the background, we see an axe stuck in a tree. We all didn't think much about it. We probably just missed it too. But the director said that the axe was modeled after one of the axes from The Shining. That's not the only reference though. In that same shot, right behind the axe, there is a red drum. The director said that this was a reference to Red Rum from The Shining, which we learned is murder backwards. You thought that was it? Think again. The Grady twins from The Shining also make an appearance. Yeah, you know those creepy little twin girls in blue dresses? They're in Coco. As Coco runs through Frida Kahlo's Underworld art studio, we see a painting of the two twin girls. The director again confirmed this reference. So creepy. Yeah, let's put The Shining in a kids movie. Great. In our 3rd spot, we have The Last Rex. Rex from Toy Story can be seen in the 2008 film WALL-E. In one scene, we see him in the back among WALL-E's collection of human junk. Now, if you think about this Easter egg is actually very depressing. Rex is all alone in a world that has been completely destroyed. All of his friends are dead. He's alone, isolated, and unloved. And as we know from all the Toy Story movies, loneliness really gets to these sentient toys. Rex is probably so anxious and depressed now. Moving on to number 2, we have Herbie Fully Drowned. Speaking of sentient things, our favorite car Herbie from Herbie Fully Loaded has died. This car has made a cameo in a number of Disney movies, but sadly, his time has come to an end. In Finding Dory, there's a scene where we see Herbie at the bottom of the ocean. He's badly decayed and covered in moss, meaning he's been down there for quite some time. Now, I don't know if Lindsay Lohan pushed the car into the ocean or what, but we all know that cars and oceans, or large bodies of water, don't mix. So sadly, his time has come to an end. And in our number 1 spot, we have The Three Little Pigs. Disney is sick for this next Easter egg. So for this one, let's jump back in time and take a look at Disney's animated short, The Three Little Pigs. In one scene, we see the pigs singing and dancing in one of their homes. But beside them, in the back, is a framed picture of sausages. As we all know, sausages are made out of pig. To make matters worse, the frame is labeled as father. So their father got turned into sausages and then eaten. In another scene, we see another framed piece of meat. This time, it's like a ham leg or something, and it's also labeled as father. So the Three Little Pigs' father was killed, hacked up, and sold as different meat items. Like, that is so twisted and sick. Starting off this countdown, we have Beauty and the Beast. Here's a film that surprisingly is based off of a real life story. Or so, that's what people believe. The story is of a real man named Petrus Gonsalves from 1537. He suffered from hypertrichosis, a condition that causes excessive hair growth all over a person's body. Due to his condition, he was captured as a child and treated like an animal or a beast. In fact, people locked him away in an iron cage and fed him animal food. And we all know that the Beast in Beauty and the Beast was locked away in his tower and treated like a monster as well. So now try looking at that movie the same. Moving on to number 9, we have The Jungle Book. Disney's movie The Jungle Book was actually based off of the book by Rudyard Kipling. But in the book, Mowgli literally turns into a wild killer. So long story short, he ends up killing Shere Khan and then discovers that his parents have been captured in a nearby village. So what does he do? He destroys the village and kills a bunch of villagers. Like, where was that in the Disney version? Definitely would have made it way more interesting. In the end, he does find a safe haven in a different village, but still, this dude literally slaughtered a village. In our 8th spot today, we have Dumbo's father. Turns out that Dumbo is another Disney movie that's based off of a real story and a real elephant. Of course, you probably have realized by now that the true versions of these stories are downright dark. So in Dumbo, Dumbo's mom is Miss Jumbo, making Dumbo's dad Mr. Jumbo. Well, this is a reference to a real-life famous elephant named Jumbo, a male African bush elephant who was treated terrible. He was tortured his whole life and then killed at a young age. You know how we don't see Dumbo's father in the film? Well, that's because his father is dead. Like, seriously, Disney, why'd you have to do that to us? Coming in at number 7, we have Snow White. In 1985, a German historian by the name of Eckhard Sander claimed he had proof that Snow White was based off of a real woman from the 16th century. Her name was Margaret von Waldeck, and she was a German countess. But when she was only 21, she was poisoned and passed away. Not only that, she was under the care of her stepmother who treated her poorly. At 16, she fell in love with a prince, but her stepmother greatly disapproved. It's believed that her stepmother was the one who poisoned and killed her. The whole story of the 7 dwarves was also real as well. Sander believes the dwarves were individuals with stunted growth as a result of working in the mines owned by her father. So there you have it. This Disney princess is based off of a real woman and her tragic life story. Moving on to number 6, we have Cinderella. Cinderella is believed to have been based off of a story from the 17th century, but it may also have been based off of a Chinese fairy tale from 206 BC. This is the story of Yi Shen. Yi Shen was the daughter of a chief. Just like in the fairy tale, Yi's father tragically passed away and she was left in the care of her evil stepmother. She even had an evil stepsister that was very rude to her. Yi was then forced to constantly wait on her mother and stepsister. Of course, in the story, there was also a ball that Yi was not allowed to attend. But she makes a wish for a beautiful silk dress and golden slippers, and her wish comes true. She then attends the ball in this beautiful outfit, but is cautious. She doesn't want to be caught by her stepmother. In the end, she ends up fleeing the ball to avoid being spotted and loses one of her golden slippers, just like Cinderella and her glass slippers. The king becomes obsessed with trying to find out who the shoe's owner is. You get it, yeah. The slipper fits and they live happily ever after. But there's also another version of the story that's much darker. And this is from the book written by the Brothers Grimm. So in the original book, when the prince arrives at Cinderella's house with the glass slipper, the sisters' feet don't fit, right? So what do? Well, one of the sisters cuts off her toe, and the other one cuts off her heel to try and make the slipper fit. Obviously, that didn't work out for them. Then, in the end, they get their eyes pecked out by a bunch of birds. So it's definitely not Disney friendly. Try to keep your mind off of that next time you watch Cinderella. We are now at our 5th and halfway mark with The Shining. The movie Coco makes a number of disturbing references to the movie The Shining, which seems weird because one is a child's movie and the other is clearly not. So in one scene in the movie, we see Dante the dog wake up from a nap. In the background, we see an axe stuck into a tree. We didn't think much of it, but the director said that axe was modeled after one of the axes from The Shining. You know, here's Johnny. That's not the only reference though. In the same shot, right behind the axe, there is a red drum. The director said this was a reference to Red Rum from The Shining, which then we know is murder backwards. So it's just creepy, okay? In our 4th spot today, we have The Hunchback of Notre Dame. I swear, this movie is based off of one of the darkest stories. So it was based off of the story by Victor Hugo. In this story, things get messy and Quasimodo fails to save Esmeralda, who is being hunted by authorities. In fact, he kind of hands them over to them by accident. And then it gets dark and he watches her get hung. In the end, he is so distraught that he goes to her grave and stays there until he starves himself to death. That's not all though. Years later, someone goes to open her grave and they find Quasimodo's bones laying next to hers. When they try to separate the bones, they turn into dust. The end. Kind of glad that the Disney movie didn't end like that. But it would kind of make for a good scary movie. Coming in at number 3, we have WALL-E. This one is, it's an interesting one, to say the least. But there's a theory going around that the humans in WALL-E ended up eating each other while on the spaceship. Yeah, you heard me. Let me explain. So in one of the scenes, it reveals to the audience that the humans were on that spaceship for longer than they had anticipated. They were only supposed to be there for about 5 years, but ended up being there for around 700 years. Okay, so how would they manage to have a food supply on board for that long? There's no way they could have. Here's another question. When someone dies on board, where's the body going? Well, theory goes that they take the body, grind it up, and make food out of it. Those drinks we see people slurping, yeah, it's liquid human. What makes it worse is that everyone on board the ship seems to be plump and well fed, meaning they enjoy eating each other. That is, if they even are aware that that's what they're doing. Moving on to number 2, we have Scar's corpse. Disney is sick for adding this into their film. So Scar's dead body can be seen in the movie Hercules. In the film, there's a scene where Hercules is wearing a lion on his body while he is getting painted. He then takes it off and throws it on the floor, and you can clearly tell that it's Scar. So after The Lion King, Scar was skinned and then given to Hercules. How dark. And this was actually confirmed by Disney's lead animator. Andreas Deja worked on animating both Hercules in Hercules and Scar in The Lion King, so they threw this in as a little Easter egg. But it's not a cute or funny Easter egg, no, it's pretty dark and messed up. And in our number 1 spot today, we have Pocahontas. The true story of Pocahontas is an extremely dark and messed up one. It is nothing like the movie Disney made it out to be. So the movie was inspired by a true story of a young girl named Matoaka. Pocahontas was just a nickname given to her, and it actually means little brat or the naughty one. So there's that. But anyways, in the film, Pocahontas is a young adult. In real life, she was only 10 years old. But don't worry though, she didn't actually have a relationship with John Smith, thankfully. In fact, in real life, John Smith was said to be a very unattractive and rude individual. Anyways, continuing on, Matoaka actually did save his life by telling her tribe to spare him right before he was about to get executed. That's pretty much as far as their relationship went. But Matoaka did not have the best life. In 1612, she was kidnapped, taken advantage of, and then forced to become Christian. They even changed her name to Rebecca. She then was forced to marry a man named John Rolfe, and she had to move to England with him. Sadly, she passed away a year later at only 20 years old. Some say she became ill with smallpox or tuberculosis and died, whereas other people believe that she was murdered for looking different. She passed away without ever seeing her family again. Isn't that a messed up story to base a child's movie off of? I think so.